colorful lines I ever worked on. We had to try a few different actual tech implementations to do just these. But it wasn't quite fast enough. Like, after a few months of work, we made this new particle system. And only then we could do engine trails. That's why it took so long. Like, we had them, I think, reclaim this explosion. First, it's going to be an explosion without all the GPU particle system elements. It's probably fine. But once it feels more defined, it feels more complete. And if you compare both at the same time, you will notice that, for me, it just looks better. Hopefully, it looks better for you too. If we take a look at that, it's without all the GPU elements. It's fine, lines and such. And these kind of tentacles, they are entirely made on the GPU particle system. It's about like 30,000 particles. It's just absurd, the number. Just silly. And then we have curl noise on top, and it's giving that wavy motion, which is pretty cool, I think. So again, without anything, with curl noise and GPU particles. It's like a secondary element of this effect, but doesn't feel right without it. It's incomplete. Actual effect that's using sign distance field is Reclaimer's gravity sphere. Here you can see all these sparks. They are actually attracted by gravity that we have. Without sign distance field, it would be so complicated to do it. I don't even know if it would be possible. And then because we can animate the whole thing in time, we can do like gravity repelling. So it's kind of bringing the sensation of instability. And it's actually good because that comes from the emergency state. And I hope you notice because it has some fire. So at the beginning, we're going to take a look at the room itself. It already has some volumetric fog applied and some animated lights. So for VFX artists, it's kind of giving the impression of like what we should do next, what we should do about this room. But there's not much happening here. We have these generators over there with flashing lights, so we probably want to do something about it. Some machinery here and there. So there's plenty of elements that we can play around with. So the first thing, usually we are adding obvious stuff. So we're going to do some smoke and steam. Here you can see all the steam added, and it's actually using the CPU particle system. It's not too bad still, and it has better lighting calculations than the GPU one. It's just because we didn't implement it yet on the GPU, so we probably want to switch all the effects to the GPU because it's so much faster. And yeah, we can use the volumetric fog to define where all the steam should go to kind of, enrich the overall feeling of the room. Next step, probably want to add some fire because, well, why not? And because we have all the machinery intact, we can just destroy it by adding that. And to me, it just, suddenly feel like there's probably some oil inside or anything that's flammable. There's some steam coming out of it. There's some fire. So suddenly you can kind of feel that it's an actual piece that's doing something. And we are not putting fire everywhere because it doesn't make really sense. You can only putting that on top of machinery that could actually emit fire because something's burning. Next step, sparks, because all VFX do need sparks. And that's something I mentioned before. We can do like 100 or 300 particles in your spark effect, and we are actually doing so. In the past, we had like, I don't know, 10. Looked fine, but not too awesome, really. So that's actually better. Like with the GPU, we can really bump up the count. And that effect of sparks falling down the ceiling, I tried that on the CPU a few years before. Didn't work, like killed the game entirely. Looked fine, but you don't want to play with 2 frames per second because I wanted to do some sparks in the game. But we also have like tiny features that actually, I like it, like collisions. On the CPU, we can do collisions with the environment, but it's so expensive, we are literally turning it down so you can have like 5 particles colliding with anything. On the GPU, it's so cool that you can sample the dev buffer of the game, you have it already. And it's super cheap to do collisions, like that's without collisions and that's with collisions on. So you can see that bouncing off the surface, and it comes literally for free. The drawback is it's only colliding with stuff that is on screen. But then again, if it's not on screen, then you don't see it, so you don't have to collide. So it's not really a big deal. So let's take a look at what we have so far. That was the empty room we had. Then we added some steam, we added some fire, we added some sparks, Suddenly kind of feels better, but we want more. That's not enough. So these turbines, they definitely do need something. And I've seen a movie in 1999, I think, and had some like a space pod racing, I think. They were kind of trying to turn them on and off. That kind of resembles me of that. So definitely should use some kind of spark coming out of these kind of fans. It looks better. And then again, it's bringing that fiction of machinery. Like these turbines, I want to imagine how it would look like. How does this machine work? How it would look like when it's destroyed. That's kind of bringing that sensation, I think. And next thing, vector fields. I mentioned them, haven't shown them really. It's a snapshot of wind. So that's without it, and that's with vector fields on. So the idea is that these energy cores are generating heat because they were damaged. And if there's heat, the air moves around. And if it moves around, probably you should push all these sparks, all this stuff around. So what we can do is that we can take the whole scenery back to the 3D app, do like a fluid simulation, save all the movement into a texture, bring it back to the engine, and it's kind of pushing them. It's like artificial wind. Next step is drinking water and adding some energy on top. So once we have all the swirls, and what I mentioned is that we are taking the whole scenery back to the 3D app and we're kind of simulating air movement around all the objects. So all that motion, it's actually, these particles are avoiding all the obstacles. If there is like a pillar over here, the air would wrap around. And we actually simulate that in 3D app. It takes forever, but in the engine, once we save it, it takes no time to actually do that type of stuff. And I think it brings that natural sense of motion and such. I think it's making more real. And I think that's all about it. Like, this game should be a little bit more real than without all the particles. They don't look like they are. So we're going to add some VFX on top. And suddenly it kind of feels more connected. So we got these generators. They do have some VFX inside. So it's kind of selling this impression that there's heat, there's kind of movement around. Like, without this effect, you would get particles emitting from nowhere. That's another step of kind of bringing fiction of machinery to life. So with GPU particles, we can actually do more. Yeah. In the past, we had lightning system, but the problem is it wasn't like scaly like probably 3.4, just because we finished that system recently. It's ready to use, but not gonna land in the game like within, I don't know, possibly 2 months or so. But it's there. It's gonna be there. So expect that to happen. Yay!